the original European tech leader, Niklas Zennstrom. What a joy to have you here with us.
Yeah, excellent to be here.
And of course, we're discussing now about Europe tech grabbing the limelight. Is European tech grabbing the limelight as much as you'd have expected when you were founding Skype?
I would say much more, 10 times more. You know, when we started Skype in 2002, it was like no one believed in the internet anymore, and everyone invested in the 2000 in the .com era here in Europe. They got burned, and there were very, very few people. You know, we had a vision that we could build a great company. Our objective was to build something that could have an exit that was bigger than PayPal, which was 1.6 billion exit. We achieved that.
Congratulations.
And, which was amazing. And last week, our friends at iSettle, acquired for 2 billion by PayPal. So they actually a bigger exit than PayPal. And it's like just one other exit. So, and you had, of course, Spotify listing. Since 2002, since we started Skype, we have had over 60 billion-dollar companies here in Europe. We had 14 $5 billion companies. And this is just accelerating. So if you think about, Spotify is 10 times the scale of Skype, and the future is going to create even bigger companies.
So what has been the perfect storm to allow this to happen? I mean, we talk about European tech being in the limelight now, 10x more than you expected. We've now got the leader of France, Macron, shining a light on European tech and global technology by meeting with global leaders such as yourself today. Is it politics? Is it money? Is it ambition? What is it that suddenly made Europe start to sing? Yeah,
I think it's all of the above. This is an ecosystem that needs a lot of different ingredients. Just like in the original tech ecosystem, Silicon Valley needed a few different things to happen. But it's also accumulation of time that makes this happen. So what you need is, it starts with, in my mind, it starts with ambitious founders. It's always going to start with ambitious founders who see a future that the rest of us don't see, and just going to go after that. Today, those founders, they can attract talent. 1 out of 5 MBA graduates in Europe go into tech. That was unheard of before. They all want to go into banking. And now we have twice as many PhD graduates in STEM than US, for example. So we have a lot of talent. And the other thing what we have now is experience. You have a lot of people who worked in these tech companies that have been scaling here in Europe for the last 10, 15 years. They go back and start a company or join another startup. And so that experience is circulated in the system. You have a lot of successful founders who are then coming back and angel investing and mentoring the next generation of founders. And then, of course, you have capital, where we have now a very, very good situation with a lot of early stage capital. We're here at Station F in Paris, which is an amazing initiative by Xavier Niel. But he's been seeding a lot of companies here in Paris, and we've seen a lot of other seed investors all over Europe. And of course, you have venture capital investors like ourselves, who are much more now experienced from an operational point of view. And the thing that really added over the last year or two is the growth capital, which is now coming in, because the growth capital is much more global, and they see the opportunities in Europe and are investing. And then, of course, IPO opportunities, where the European stock markets are actually very open to tech IPOs. 4 out of the 10 largest tech IPOs last year were in Europe.
I want to dig into the money side a little bit more. Money talks, as we know. I've got a great chart, really, from Bloomberg's own data showing, yes, we're starting to see money come in, but look at how much the US still exceeds Europe in terms of venture capital. In the blue, we see how much US, it's like 80 billion, we're seeing just 20 billion currently in Europe. When do we start to see that amount of capital balance itself? Or actually, is the money just going to flow from the US into Europe? Do we not need to seed that cash here?
No, it's a good question. First of all, it's not a zero-sum game. Technology is now happening everywhere. It's not a fight of where is the technology going to happen. Technology companies are happening globally. So that's a good thing. And what's interesting, you cannot see that from these curves, but I would think that the growth is steeper in Europe than US. So we're coming from behind. Silicon Valley has existed for 50 years. And And the capital has been chasing all the entrepreneurial activities in Silicon Valley and then in China, and just now starting to catch up with Europe. So whether Europe is going to be bigger in terms of venture capital investing than US, that's probably going to be a very long time. But the playing field is being equalized. And the reason for that is that Silicon Valley, of course, there's so much experience, there's so much ambition, and there's so much money there. But it's also, there's a lot of engineers, but it's the hardest place to hire engineers because there's so much competition. Yeah. So it's actually, today is no longer a really big competitive advantage to start a company in Silicon Valley. And in fact, you see that even in the US, where there are startups say, I'm not going to be in the Valley, I'm going to be in LA or in Boston or New York or Austin. So it's no longer just one place or the other.
What about the hubs in Europe? Paris is obviously becoming more of a focal point, but there's only been, what, 3 so-called unicorns, 3 more than $1 billion valuation companies born in France. Is that going to change, or should we expect to see different hubs performing at different rates and more opportunities for money like you?
I think the world is a tech hub today. Paris is amazing. It's now, over the last year, it's been having more venture capital investment than Germany. And a few years ago, we all thought it's London, Berlin, and Stockholm. Those are the 3 hubs where everything is concentrating. What we've seen, we're traveling around all over Europe and finding fantastic companies. And so it's no longer, so also within Europe, it's not a fight between London and Paris. It's like all these boats are rising with the tide.
How has London changed? We were talking about finally growth capital coming in. I see $100 billion vision fund sat right in London at the moment. Is that where the exciting opportunities are coming in terms of the amount of money? Is that sort of amount of money good for the ecosystem as well?
So, the earlier stage money is really local, and then you have venture, like bigger venture from like ourselves, or more like maybe regional, and then you have the growth capital, which is very global. You have the large growth investors like the Vision Fund, headquartered in London, money coming, Asia, Saudi Arabia, and other places. That is global capital, and they don't have a bias versus where these companies come from. They just are focused on finding these great companies. So this is a really, really good. That phenomenon that you have. Growth capital is a good thing. Now, the Vision Fund, they have a new strategy that we've all been amazed with.
Pleased with?
It's a lot of good things, and there's a lot of things to watch for.
What should we watch for?
When a company is getting a term sheet with a valuation that is really high, and also a lot of more money than they even can deal with, it may kind of confuse those companies a little bit, and it may start spending too much. But the theory that they have, the bigger thesis though, is that technology is going to grow faster and have more impact, create more value in the next 10 years than it did in the previous 10 years. It's the same vision that Euro Milner had a few years ago, but this is a bigger scale. And this is a reflection of the technology is getting bigger and bigger.
As technology gets bigger and bigger, so too do perhaps unintended consequences get bigger and bigger. We are about to see Macron speak with yourself, but also Mark Zuckerberg and Dara Khosrowshahi about tech for good and technology remembering its responsibility. How do you talk to your startups about growing the culture and the ethics in the way you want to see?
This is a very, very important issue that personally I spend a lot of time speaking to my peers and other people in the tech world about. And if you think about most, I would kind of say all, but a lot of the successful tech companies, whether you take Facebook or Google or Amazon, and certainly I know that our intention when we started Skype, we wanted to have an impact. We wanted to have a positive impact. We want to change something for the better. So I think that's kind of in the mentality of a lot of tech founders. Now, when these companies are getting bigger and bigger, you have these consequences that is unintended. And we've all been trained by our lawyers and our media people to have a position, that we're a platform and we're just providing technology. and it's rest up to the others to do what they want. I think that was something that when tech didn't have so much impact was maybe something that was okay. Today, I think we all have to take responsibility and have an open dialogue about this. But what is really interesting, though, is that when we speak to kind of the next generation of founders who are just starting their companies and looking for financing, they are seeing what's happening. So they already starting to think, okay, how should I think about this when I build my company so I can make sure we're providing something that is not going to have an issue. So there's a lot of, so when we have conversation with our companies about ethics, about diversity, they're extremely open-minded about this, and they want to build this in from the beginning in their values.
It's also something you as a philanthropist are looking at, about the responsibility and potential of technology helping take out bias rather than reinforce it within artificial intelligence, and in fact the repercussions on climate change, for example. Do you think tech will eventually be a force for good? Do you think that in the mind's eye, what will it mean to change from a public relations point of view as well?
I think that the net of kind of digital companies so far is positive. If you take a step back and look at the Industrial Revolution and the kind of the mechanical technology, it's great, created a lot of work, created economical growth, but also created a lot of damage on the planet to the state that we are now overusing the planet's resources, and we are heading for a disaster with climate change. And my firm belief is that the solution to a lot of this climate and other sustainability issues is technology. So it's new technologies. So whether that is solar, whether that is Elon Musk changing the car industry to go electric, whether it's electrical aviation like lithium, or whether it's companies are applying technology to save water and all those kind of things, those companies are going to have a positive impact and be part of the solution to a sustainable world. So that is really the positive end of technology, which I believe has an impact. But at the same time, we need to watch for these negative consequences. You talked about biases for AI system, which is a big problem. The more we talk about this, the more the engineers working on these systems, they're learning from this, and they're going to hopefully, and I believe that they will over time, be able to build systems that has less bias. Because at the end of the day, we as humans, unfortunately, we have biases. And today, first generation of a lot of these machine learning systems are using data that is fed by people who have biases.
Something we'll be talking a lot more with Mustafa Suleiman of DeepMind, who's joining us later. Talking of technology being the answer, I forgot to pick up my technology, and I'm just going to come and grab it here, because we do have yourselves hopefully using technology right now in terms of tweeting. I want you looking at your phones. I want you tweeting on hashtag STYT, but also I want you sending potential questions to us through the web app that we have here. Do put some questions to Niklas Zennstrom as well as my own at the moment. But I wanted to move on to the exciting technologies that, such we said, they might have biases, but artificial intelligence is something that everyone wants to talk about. We heard the previous speaker from Accenture talking about blockchain. What is exciting you at the moment in terms of technology being homegrown right here in Europe?
Yeah. What is exciting here is that you have a lot of deep knowledge and understanding about these technologies here. And maybe this is something that was hiding in the universities before, but now these are a lot of forward thinkers and scientists in these deep techs are coming forward and creating companies. And London and the Cambridge area is really on the forefront of AI, and Paris is also really, really good. Places like Munich and Zurich is strong as well. So this is exciting that there is a lot of innovation happening here. You mentioned DeepMind is the world's premier kind of AI company. It's based in London. So this is the thing that is exciting. Then, of course, what is exciting is about how you can apply these technologies and the speed it is actually happening. And I would say maybe 2 years ago, it was a lot of talk about hype. Today, there are real implementations in a wider range of applications of machine learning and also now neural networks, so more deep learning. So AI and machine learning is becoming an enabling technology in the same way as the cloud was. So not every company needs to be like an AI first company, but they are using AI that's provided by maybe other companies. So it's exciting how we can use to solve problems. Then there is also things to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And that is really about the one who have the data. The data always wins over the algorithm. So the more data you have, the more powerful you're going to be. So the existing really big companies with a lot of data, of course, they have a competitive advantage.
How do you find out the next companies that have a competitive advantage and that will use your capital to the best degree?
It's when we look back in our data and from our investments and we like to always think about our anti-portfolio, the ones that we missed, but also all the other successful companies and it's actually always come back to the founders and if they have, because that's where it starts, that's the origin and the people that they can assemble around them, and the vision that they can articulate. And the strategy, that is kind of number one. And then it's about using technology to create competitive advantages, whether that is a business model that creates network effects. And so the more data you have, the more users you have, the more powerful the service is. So that means that you can, it's harder for others to compete over time. But again, it's and also with defensibility and technology. But what it's not so much about is like whoever has the most patents. It's more about how you can create a service that have users and customers using it more and more.
When you look at founders, I've got a fascinating question coming from Paolo Panomo here. Looking at founders, looking at your portfolio companies, what steps are you taking to foster diversity and inclusion in those portfolio companies? What actions can you recommend to other VCs out there?
Yeah, it's horrible when you're looking at the stats in terms of the diversity among founders. It's way too many men, too few women, and that's something that we'll need to work really hard.
We've got a great chart that shows this. I'll just give time to our analysts to bring it up.
So this is something that certainly we've taken a lot of seriously. And one thing that we've done recently, we're asking our portfolio companies when we're investing, what is your diversity policy? What is your diversity stats? Just asking those questions. And because when they're speaking to us and our peers, that's maybe like the first time they're speaking to someone who's a bit more of an institutional investor. We maybe before us they have the board there's a board, but it's not as structured, and so we're setting them up for proper governance. So it's our responsibility, I think, to ask those questions, and all these founders are responding very positively to this. They may not have these things in place, but they want to have this in place. So asking the questions with the companies, that's an important thing. But then, of course, it starts way earlier than that. It starts with having a much better balance when it comes to engineering training in universities.
Asking the question, also, that here we have actually the fascinating and painful statistics that just how many white Caucasians are in technology and how it has not changed from 2007 all the way up to 2017, and still ethnic diversity is so little. When you're talking to your founders as well, not only you're talking about how to grow their company with an ethical mindset, but also with an ambitious mindset. Let's talk about another question that I'm being asked, because small country like Sweden, you brought, of course, your own technology to bear, but we've then had Spotify, we've had iZettle, which got snapped up. Why? In what way do you want to see these companies grow? Do you want them to list like Spotify? Are you happy when you see an M&A takeout like iZettle? When
we speak to founders about the future, if they tell us, we're going to build this company, we're going to sell it, then we say, like, good luck. If they say, I'm going to build a great company that's going to have an impact, going to change something in the world, and I'm in it for a long run, and I'm not so focused about an exit because I'm focusing on building something that's lasting. And sure, yes, that means that we're going to probably list the company at some point. That's what you want to hear. And And now there's also more and more confidence that it's possible, much more easy to list a company, tech company.
In Europe or in the US?
Well, both. I think now it's easier it seems to be easier in Europe. And the stats tell us that we've had more tech listings in Europe the last 2 years than US, while, as you showed us this chart, that there's considerably less venture investment. So the ratio venture-backed company to listed companies is much better here. And I think this is important. And there's a few reasons. One is that is valuations. That in the US, because of there been so much capital coming into the US tech market, valuations on the later stage have been quite pushed up. So the multiples, the private multiples in the US versus the public multiples are somewhat inflated. Or they're high, whether they're inflated or not, but they're higher than the public multiples. So that's a challenge for these companies when they go public in the US to get into the right multiple. So in Europe, because we haven't had as much funding, the multiples are much more in line with the public multiples. So it's easier transition to go public. So I think that's one reason. And we also have a very, very good set of institutional long-term investors, whether those are the big pension funds and insurance companies and so forth. They are now starting to realize that they want to have exposure to homegrown tech and to both support the economy, but also to participate in the value creation. So in that way, if a company is being acquired by an American company or an Asian company, that value goes away from Europe. So of course, it's better that they're being listed as well just for the economy.
I see. And what do you think, therefore, will happen when you are speaking to your portfolio companies? Are you sort of saying, look, I think you should bring it to bear in Europe, list in Europe? Or are you saying, okay, I understand why you want to go in the US and be a Spotify?
Yeah. At the end of the day, they need to do what's best for the business. And I don't think it matters so much because I haven't looked at the investor base in Spotify's listing, but I don't think it's only American investors. Likewise, I know that when a company like Rovio listed in Helsinki, so this is a Finnish company, last year they had a lot of support from Nordic investors, institutional investors, but also from American and European investors. So ultimately, we want to see companies that can become global companies, and then if they list, where they list may not be that important. What's important is that they continue to focus on scaling their business.
And scaling the business, I got one last question here from Brad Stone, who was on the stage before. What do you think of Microsoft's stewardship of Skype? When you sold your company, are you pleased you sold, or do you wish that you IPO'd it? Do you wish that you sold shares?
We had 2 chances. So when we set out to build Skype a long time ago in 2002, I think we were quite contrarian because everyone thought that you can build companies. If you want to build a company, you should build a local company, a copycat. We want to build a global company. And we said, we want this company to be around and be a meaningful company that makes people be able to communicate worldwide in 15 years. So that we are 15 years forward now. So I'm very proud of where Skype is. And because every time I travel around the world, people coming up to me and thanking me for Skype because it helps them with the relationships, to stay in contact with friends or in business. So that ultimately something that makes me proud and very happy. And when we sold Skype the first time, it was really no exit market. Skype was the biggest kind of consumer internet exit globally after the .com crash. So it was a big thing, and there was absolutely no IPO opportunities. So it was the right thing to do. Of course, it would have been better for the ecosystem if Skype would have stayed, if we hang on to it and stayed and went public. Having said that, that exit was a catalyst for other entrepreneurs to think bigger and to say, well, if these guys can do it, they know me, they know I'm not that smart. If they know that I can do it, then they can do it. And that's what's happening. So I think it was maybe also a good thing for the ecosystem. And if we wouldn't sold Skype, I wouldn't have started Atomico. And we're really much on a mission with Atomico to build the ecosystem here in Europe. So I'm quite happy with how things turned out.
And one question you're going to put to Macron today, or one takeaway you want?
I think, first of all, I think it's fantastic that he's embracing technology and entrepreneurship. So I think that is a really, really good thing. And I would just ask him what more can he do, and I would also ask him what can we do. So how can we build these things together?
It's been wonderful hearing from him. You know him as, of course, the co-founder of Skype, but also he's the CEO, founder of Atomico, pumping money back into the ecosystem here, and notably a very active philanthropist as well. Thank you very much indeed, Niklas Zennstrom, and thank you for your questions.
Thank you.